everyone and welcome back to my channel. We are almost halfway through the year of 2017 and I like to take this time of the year to look back at my reading year so far and also look at some of my favorite books I've read this year so far. I have a pile of favorite books and I also have a pile of honorable mentions. So I think I'm going to start out with the honorable mentions which didn't make it to my favorites list, but they were still so amazing and I highly recommend them. I really like John Irving, so when I read his The World According to Garp, it immediately went to my favorites list of books I've read this year. This one is about Garp, who lives together with his mother in America, and their lives are kind of peculiar. It's a very quirky story, but I loved it for that, and the coming of age part and the development of the characters was just amazing to read about. And let's continue with the big books, the big classics. Here we have The Grapes of Wrath by John Steinbeck, which I read really recently and absolutely loved. So this one is about America during the Great Depression, and it's about people who live in the east of America and who have to move to the west in order to survive and find jobs. And it's not an easy journey at all. This story definitely depicts the harsh realities of life back in those days, and it's a very cruel but also very important story, I think. The next book that made it to my honorable mentions is Here I Am by Jonathan Safran Foer. This is the Danish title, but I think it's the same cover in American or in English. So this one is such an interesting book because, I don't know, something about it wouldn't really be up my alley, but at the same time all of the elements of this novel, they just work so well together, and my overall impression of this book was that I absolutely loved it. It's about a family in America, and it's also about religion, and it's about little Jacob who is about to receive his bar mitzvah, and that provokes some thoughts and opinions of his, which kind of starts the story. I really liked it, and even though it's a huge novel, I flew through it. And the last book I have on my honorable mentions is a very unique story, I have to say, and that is Lincoln in the Bardo by George Saunders. This one is written very peculiarly. It kind of reminds me of Ulysses by James Joyce in a way, but it's not at all the same messy story. This one is more of an interesting and touchy story, I think, because it's about Lincoln, who lost a son of his due to illness, and according to history, he went and visited his son's grave during the night a couple of times after his death. So this book revolves around that, and Lincoln is basically in the bardo because he's trying to help his son go to heaven, but at the same time it's a very hard journey to let go of him and to accept what has happened. This book is about so many things. I'm only touching on the very surface right now, but definitely a book that had an impact on me, and I just love it when literature brings freshness to my eyes. Did that even make sense? I hope so. So we have now made it to my favorite books I've read so far this year. The first one being The Circle by Dave Eggers, which has just been turned into a movie. I haven't watched the movie because I haven't heard great things about it, but this book was great, I have to say. In case you don't know, it's about a society which is very similar to our society today, but in this society, technology has taken over and people almost can't think for themselves because machines do everything for you. Very strong piece of work, I think. And I also think I finished this on the first day of this year, on January the 1st. So that was definitely a good start to my reading year. Next we have Blonde by Joyce Carol Oates, which is a fictional piece of work about the life of Marilyn Monroe from she's a child until her death when she is in her early 30s, I believe. Now this book is so amazing on so many levels because it's of course a fictional piece of work, but it also very much depicts the reality of Monroe's life, so that it's based on her life and facts, but as I said, it's fiction, so it's also very much about Marilyn Monroe's thoughts and feelings and development that of course Joyce Carol Oates couldn't know anything about when she wrote this book, but she does so very, very well. I really love this book. It's a 1000-page novel, so beware, it is quite huge, but I assure you it is definitely worth the journey. Then I have here The Crane's Dance by Meg Howry. This is a smaller book, and this one is about two sisters who are ballet dancers in New York. One of the sisters has just gone home to her family because of pressure. She has developed some kind of stress and maniacy, is that what it's called? Whereas the other sister stays in New York, and then we get to follow her journey as a professional ballet dancer. I believe the author was a ballet dancer herself back in the days, so this novel gives you a rare insight into the life of this profession, and I really liked it. But the story in itself was incredible as well. This book was really good fiction and definitely on my favorites list so far. Next I have here Under the Budala Trees by Chinelo Operanda, which I also read fairly recently. And this one takes place in Nigeria, and it's about this main character who is a girl and who is into girls. But she lives in a family in which it is not accepted to be a lesbian, and her mother forces her to live according to tradition and find a man and marry him. It's a very heartbreaking story, but nevertheless a very important one, I think. Especially because you can feel the frustration and the hurt that the main character is going through. The second to last book is this one, which is by Haruki Murakami, and I always forget the English title because it is quite long. I think it's something to do with the colorless Tsuzuku Tasaki's Years of Pilgrimage. I'm pretty sure that's it. This book I loved. I am quite a fan of Murakami's. Some of his books I have adored, others I have liked but not loved. But this one was one of those that I absolutely adored. It's about this group of friends who stuck together during the college years, and then for some reason this group of friends decides to shut out our main character and not talk to him anymore. And it's many years later that we get to follow him and his journey in trying to figure out what went wrong and what happened to this group of amazing friends. It's a good story, it's a great piece of fiction, and it's just a really good novel, I think. I keep saying I think, but I do think so. And the very last novel that made it to my favorite list of books this year so far is of course The Unseen World by Liz Moore. I had to include this novel on my list. So this one is about Ada, who is about 13 or 14 years old, and she lives alone together with her father. They have a very unique relationship because they only have each other and they adore each other. Of course they also see other people, but it's about their relationship. And then one day Ada realizes that her father starts forgetting important things, and it all evolves into this journey of losing her father and his consciousness, and also finding out some things about him that she didn't know beforehand. But this one was just a really good story, a heartbreaking but also a very impactful story, I think. So that is it for my favorites books list of this year so far. I hope that you got some recommendations out of it, and also let me know in the comments if you have any recommendations for me, because I would like to know. Thank you ever so much for watching, and until my next video, happy reading.